People say spooky season ends with October, but you and I know that isn't true. To me, winter is the cozy season, and I love to watch creepy movies under a warm blanket while the snow piles up outside. So today we're going to talk about 10 cozy horror movies that have a perfect snowy winter feeling. My name is Daniel with the Cobwebs channel, and let's get started.
They say when you freeze to death, it's just like going to sleep.
Wind Chill from 2007. So this is about two college students who share a ride home for the holidays, but on a deserted, snowy road, their car breaks down and they are preyed upon by the ghosts of people that have died there before. So yes, it is a ghost movie, but this is such a good winter film because the winter weather, the snow, the cold, is every bit as much of a threat as the ghosts are. In fact, it's probably more of a threat. This is such a brutally cold feeling movie, but for people that love the snow, love to see it on screen, it's got such a fantastic atmosphere. Now, this is actually starring Emily Blunt, who's great here. It's fun to see her in an early role, but the characters aren't exactly likable in this one. She's pretty mean, the snippy popular girl, and he's got some secrets that get revealed along the way that really make me dislike him, but I couldn't help but notice that about halfway through the film, it was getting me on their side, and I felt more and more sympathetic to them just being put in this horrible situation. It's hard not to feel for anybody in that, and I found myself feeling tense, worried that things were going to happen, sad when other things happen, and I was like, man, movie, how did you do this to me? How'd you get me to turn around on this? The ghost stuff is actually some of the weaker parts of the movie. They don't look particularly cool. It's not super scary. And the backstory that gets revealed is totally fine, but I wouldn't say remarkable in any way. It's the survivalist aspect of this that made me feel tense and got me on board with this. Wind Chill is a solid little gem of 2000s horror. Because December just kicked off, I know most of you are looking for the perfect holiday gifts for your friends and family. Well, likely they've gotten a lot of gifts over the years, which is why I'm excited to suggest one that I think will be truly memorable, one that feels crafted, not manufactured. It's the sponsor of this video, The Book, the ultimate guide to rebuilding civilization. What if a snowstorm hit the world so bad this Christmas that we had to rebuild civilization from scratch? Sure, that's not likely to happen, but what I think is so cool about this book is its practical intellectual value. It's packed with deep and rarely taught knowledge about all kinds of topics like food and cooking, medicine, psychological practices like meditation and self-improvement, aviation and electricity. I really enjoyed this section on fishing because it doesn't assume you can go to a sporting store and buy equipment. It tells you how to do it completely from scratch. That's the point of this book, and it was created by a multidisciplinary team of over 50 professionals. And it came at the perfect time for me because my kid is now at the age where he's asking a ton of questions, and I don't know a lot of the answers. This thing is really helping me build my knowledge so he can actually believe I'm smart. Maybe? And what a cool aesthetic to have for a coffee table book. This thing is absolutely beautiful with thick, high quality paper full of beautiful illustrations. I mean, look at this intricate drawing that represents salt and preservation, including a mummy. That rules. Or Santa Claus driving a gyroplane. You guys know how much I love physical media. This thing is a good case for why. Having something real, textured, artful in your hands is the best way to enjoy something. You'll never get this feeling from a digital gift. I think it's a great Christmas present idea for curious people, which is what I try to be. And I'm happy to say my audience can get 10% off this book by clicking the link in the description and the pinned comment, or by scanning the QR code on the screen. And thank you to The Book for sponsoring this video. And now let's get back to more winter horror.
Pardon me for saying this, but you all look prepared for a funeral or worse.
Iced from 1989. This is about a group of childhood friends, now adults, who are invited to the opening of a fancy ski resort, unaware that an old nemesis, supposedly now dead, has murderous plans for them. This is a direct-to-VHS 80s slasher movie that was recently revived by Vinegar Syndrome, who put it out on Blu-ray, and now it's widely available on streaming. I don't believe it was shot on video, but it kind of looks like that, I think due to the elements that they had in order to restore it, and were not able to restore it super well. So it feels like you're watching an old VHS. But after just initially judging it just based on how it looks when I first put it on, this ended up being better than I thought it was gonna be. First of all, the characters, pretty solid. Like, they're not teenagers. It starts out when they're much younger, but it cuts forward in time. And they're now adults, and they feel like adults. They're not these typical immature characters you normally get in movies like this, except for one of them, but that's kind of a plot point that he can't seem to grow up. You got Deborah DeLiso in here as the main character, who's a veteran from Slumber Party Massacre. Also, Joseph Allen Johnson from Slumber Party Massacre, and he even wrote this movie. But the standout cast member is definitely Lisa Loring, who's kind of the center of all the soap opera drama that you get throughout this movie, and she's the hot one who provides a lot of the skin that, and this movie has a lot of that, by the way. A little bit controversially when it came out, because she's the original Wednesday Addams from the 1960s Addams Family show. That kind of blew my mind to learn that she went on to do 80s slasher movies. But I thought she was good here. I thought she did a fantastic job. Now, I would say it's heavier on the sleaze than the gore, so this isn't one of the most gory slashers, therefore making it maybe more of a fun, chill watch for you on a snowy night. It's got great atmosphere. I love that it takes place at a ski resort, so it feels so nice and warm and cozy inside, but cold in a fun, atmospheric way when you're outside. The mystery is actually decently interesting, with a pretty good backstory and some red herrings thrown in there along the way to keep you guessing. I saw several Letterboxd reviews calling this out for being boring and not very much happens. And I don't know, guys, I didn't feel like that. Like, the character drama is silly and over the top enough to keep you entertained. There's some nonsensical moments that just leave you scratching your head but are fun in movies like this. Some gore, some skin. This is a good old-fashioned corny 80s slasher. I like that kind of thing. I really enjoyed Iced.
Who says it got out?
Maybe.
I'm a werewolf.
Werewolves Within from 2021. When a proposed pipeline creates hostilities between residents of a small town, a newly arrived forest ranger must keep the peace after a snowstorm confines the townspeople to an old lodge. But when a mysterious creature begins terrorizing the group, it's up to him to keep the residents alive. So this is actually loosely based on the video game Werewolves Within, and therefore it's very much focused on a mystery. There is a werewolf out there, but which one of us is it? It's got such a great feeling taking place in this old lodge. I've never been to a ski lodge, a ski resort, but I really want to. I feel like this with this shirt, I mean, I feel like I should definitely do that. So I love any movie that gives me that kind of feeling. And it's actually directed by Josh Rubin, who I've gone on to become a big fan of. Like, he just recently made Hard Eyes. But what really makes the movie for me are the two main characters. The Ranger, played by Sam Richardson, who I think is like such an underrated actor. He's just like one of the most wholesome and likable personas I've ever seen on screen. As well as Milena Vantrub, the AT&T girl, who's just so cute and adorable in this. The mystery, solid. You've got a lot of fun character actors providing our suspects. Not a ton of werewolf action on screen. A lot of it's hidden and such, but pretty good once we get to it. And this film is just fun and funny and not to be taken seriously whatsoever, while still having a lot of death. This werewolf has quite the body count, so horror fans are definitely going to be satisfied.
Get away from her, Dave. What are you? She's dangerous.
Ghost Story.
Ghost Story from 1981. Four successful elderly gentlemen, members of the Chowder Society, share a gruesome 50-year-old secret. When one of their sons dies in a bizarre accident, they begin to see a pattern of frightening events developing. The central idea of this movie is so great, about a group of old men who get together to share ghost stories. That's just one of the most wonderfully cozy things I can ever imagine. And it has got a shockingly star-studded cast among these guys. Old Hollywood actors like Fred Astaire, this was actually his last movie, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Melvin Douglas, even John Houseman, who you should know as the guy who tells the initial story in The Fog. And much like the stories these guys tell, I love that this is such a classic ghost story. Now, it is a little bit slow at times. In fact, I find most of the beginning pretty slow before we start delving into the backstory. This film really tells its story through two different timelines, in the present day in the 80s and taking place 50 years ago when they were young. And when they were young, that part is all wonderful. Actually, the less snowy part of the movie, but it's all about Alice Krieg, who I think is amazing in this film. She is so unbelievably captivating. I mean, you've got so many old Hollywood legends in here, and I barely remember them whenever Alice Krige is on screen. That whole backstory is fascinating, really emotionally involving. I'm always a big fan of ghost stories when they're about like wrongs of the past and the ghosts coming back to haunt those that have wronged them, to correct it, and the mystery has to be uncovered. Here you've actually got Craig Wasson as the young man trying to uncover this mystery, who you probably know from Body Heat or Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. I'm a sucker for that kind of thing, and when you throw in the beautiful snowy winter feel that this movie has, the director actually said he wanted this movie to look and feel like a Christmas card. And I think he did it. The wintry scenery is so jaw-dropping, but you still get some of the most frightening ghost imagery I have ever seen on screen. And there was even more practical ghost effects that were going to make it into this movie that didn't actually end up. And they later got reused years later in the House on Haunted Hill remake. That's just one of my favorite wild random facts about movies. But Ghost Story fits this list perfectly.
Storm, the pine trees. It's like a dream.
Dead of Winter from 1987. A struggling actress is lured to a remote mansion for a screen test, soon discovering she is actually a prisoner in the middle of a blackmail plot. This is one that is generally considered a horror movie, but maybe a little bit less horror and a little more thriller. In fact, I would say this is a pretty typical gaslighting thriller. It's a loose remake of a 1940s film called My Name is Julia Ross. I haven't actually seen that one, but something that makes this film so great is really the two main performances. You've got Mary Steenburgen in the lead role. I mainly know her as playing the mom in so many different things. She's been the mom over and over again, like in Elf, maybe most famously, but also great in Back to the Future 3. She's wonderful here. Gives such a likable, but really powerful performance that just lit up the film. Oh yeah, and a typical dad is in here. William Russ, the dad from Boy Meets World, as well as Roddy McDowall, who's not the main villain, more the main henchman, but leaves the biggest impression. Roddy McDowall rules. Now the plot of this one, the mystery, it's a little over the top. It's a little bit silly at times. A lot of it hinges upon the idea that several people look exactly alike, and the movie wouldn't work at all if these people didn't look exactly alike. A little bit hard to buy. And then the final climax of the movie, no spoilers, but it involves Mary Steenburgen being chased by somebody that it's kind of ridiculous. But that movie has that perfect mystery thriller vibe in an old, dark, spooky house in the dead of winter. And the atmosphere is phenomenal. It actually helps her being a prisoner in this house that sometimes she can get out of the house, but it's so brutally cold she can't get far, so the elements are a big threat as well. But even though most of it doesn't take place out in that snow, it really nails the feeling of being cozy indoors in a beautiful house while the snow is piling up outside. I love that vibe. Not so much because of being kidnapped, but hey, it is a horror movie.
Little Red Riding Hood.
The Wolf of Snow Hollow from 2020. Terror grips a small mountain town as mangled bodies are discovered after each full moon. Losing sleep, raising a teenage daughter, and caring for his ailing father, Officer Marshall struggles to remind himself there's no such thing as werewolves. So this is written, directed by, and starring Jim Cummings, a guy who made a fairly big splash when he put out Thunder Road, and he also had a small role in Halloween Kills. But he's a really weird, very distinctive vibe. He really thrives on dramedy, on creating comedy through a lot of very dark drama. And to me, he's a super weird screen persona, just the kind of guy you don't really see in movies very often. A lot of the movie centers on his character, on being a small town policeman desperately trying to solve horrific, and I do mean horrific murders that are happening in this town, and him falling apart because of it. And for me, the balance is slightly off in that I think I would have liked more time spent on the actual mystery and a little bit less time on him as a character study, but for sure it is mostly focused on his nervous breakdown. But it is interesting. He's a weird guy, which makes him kind of fascinating. But the supporting cast around him, wonderful, with the late great Robert Forrester in one of his last roles. murders. And Riki Lindholm is great here, an actress that I'm used to seeing pop up randomly in small roles, but rarely gets the chance to shine as much as she does here. The vibe of the movie is spectacular. I love this snowy, small mountain town. It really does feel like a community. You see a lot of people popping up. They feel like real people that would live in a town like this. The movie is really good at quickly setting up each victim of the murders so that you feel the murder. When they get killed, it's sad. Like, you feel the tragedy of it. And I'm really impressed how effectively the movie is able to do that. And the monster, the Wolfman of Snow Hollow, as he's called in the film, he looks amazing. Like, he is such an incredible presence on screen. Now, I will say, the first time I watched this movie, I was really disappointed by the ending. It just wasn't what I wanted it to be. Rewatching it actually last night, knowing what it is from the start, I was much better able to appreciate it for what it is on its own terms, and I'm a big fan of Wolf of Snow Hollow.
This house has an energy all its own. We don't need to find the darkness here, Paul. It's everywhere.
We Are Still Here from 2015. After the death of their college-age son, an older couple relocates to a snowy New England village in a house where they start to believe their son's spirit is still with them. This is one I've talked about a lot. It's one of my favorite indie horror films of the 2010s, a particularly favorite category of mine, but I absolutely had to talk about it again because when it comes to cozy, snowy horror movies, this is one of the first ones that I think of. I love the feeling of this so much. It's another small town one taking place in New England. I love the feeling of this house just surrounded by cold. This is a really quiet feeling movie to me. And winter is a particularly quiet season, right? While all of nature goes dead and it's just cold. It's a time when things slow down. And while this is not a slow movie in terms of being boring, it's slow and quiet in terms of tension building. And it's really good at that, leading up to actually banger ghost sequences. It's that balance that I like. It's got that feeling I was talking about, but also this is one of those ghost films where you see the ghosts on screen. They look incredible. They've got a very creepy design. I love to see ghosts on screen. I don't want them to just be invisible. And you get some gore here, some pretty awesome practical effects. I love the cast in this one. It's one of the early films in Barbara Crampton's comeback, so she's the lead here and is just great. At a certain point, her and her husband bring in a couple of friends of theirs who are these like new age people who they think are going to be able to contact the ghosts and ask them to leave. And they're played by the indie horror legend Larry Fessenden, as well as Lisa Marie, who you'll probably recognize from Sleepy Hollow. Yeah, it's low budget and maybe you can feel it a little bit, but I think the film operates within those restrictions extremely well, has really cool effects, creature design, and the snow does so much for the atmosphere, making it feel like millions of dollars more expensive than it is.
You're crazy to know who I am, aren't you? I'll show you.
The Invisible Man from 1933. After experimenting on himself and becoming invisible, scientist Jack Griffin begins to lose his mind as he fights for world domination. So I just did a live stream recently and somebody asked me what are some snowy black and white horror films. And I thought, man, I really wish there were more, but there's The Abominable Snowman from Hammer. There's, I think, Curse of the Cat People, though it's been a long time since I've seen that, but I'm pretty sure it's snowy. But then afterwards I remembered The Invisible Man. You get that iconic scene where the Invisible Man comes out of the snow, of the blizzard. He's all bundled up and people don't think too much of it. Well, yes, thinking he's weird, but he's all bundled up from the cold, right? And then you've also got scenes where he's running around naked in the snow. So you see the footprints and that's a way that they're able to track him. This is a good wintry horror film that really uses the winter setting to do a lot for the plot and to make some things a little bit more explainable. And I love this. This is one of the classic Universal Monsters movies, directed by James Whale, who did the first two Frankenstein films as well. And it's groundbreaking in special effects. This is the early 1930s. I mean, talkies are very new. It's very new that you could even have talking in movies, and here they're doing these incredible special effects with the Invisible Man stuff. But maybe the greatest special effect is Claude Rains' voice. Claude Rains is epic as the Invisible Man, the definition of a maniacal horror villain. I just love how gleefully evil he becomes, and the movie gets a lot of comedy out of that. So it is kind of a horror comedy, but I still take it seriously enough to not just consider it a horror comedy. It's a great horror film with a lot of laughs and perfect snowy atmosphere. Black Phone 2 from 2025. 4 years after escaping the grabber, Finney and his sister Gwen begin receiving calls and visions of 3 boys being stalked at a winter camp. They become determined to solve the mystery and confront a killer who has grown more powerful in death. So I like the original The Black Phone, which came out a few years ago, but it was very straightforward and therefore not super interesting to me. But I become such a huge fan of this latest one. I like it so much better because I love how supernatural they have made it, even more than the first film, which is already somewhat supernatural. It seemed crazy to keep following the grabber in a sequel when he so clearly died in the first movie, but they bring him back in such a brilliant way that clearly uses Nightmare on Elm Street as a jumping off point, but feels very organic to the lore of this story. While dreams and visions and ghosts have already been well established here, having him come back through dreams just felt perfect. And Ethan Hawke still absolutely rules as this character. He is so scary here. I mean, he has this speech about what hell is and what it's done to him that just chilled me to my bone. He's so great. And just the look of the mask is amazing. But none of it would work as well as it does if I didn't love the main character so much. And I really do here. The sister Gwen was a standout in the first film, but I think she's really elevated to the main character here and is so clearly the heart of the film. And I just cared about her so much. It made the movie so tense for me. Even though this isn't a film with a high body count or a lot of blood, I was so tense because I was so desperate for these characters, especially her, to be okay. As far as how wintry it is, it has such a brutally cold winter atmosphere. So much of it is taking place not just out in the snow, but in blizzards at night, even out on frozen lakes with people falling in. The cold is such a threat. Even though I feel like the characters don't act cold, maybe as much as they should have, but I certainly felt cold while watching this. It's got a great feeling to it, all taking place at this winter camp. Black Phone 2 is one of my favorite horror movies of the year. I think it's fantastic.
Shh, darling. Trust me.
God's sake!
Misery from 1990. After an accident, acclaimed novelist Paul Sheldon is rescued by a nurse who claims to be his biggest fan. Her obsession takes a dark turn when she holds him captive in her remote Colorado home and forces him to write back to life the popular literary character he killed off. One of the most classic Stephen King horror movies, and that is for good reason. Misery is absolutely fantastic. Movies where people get held hostage, kidnapped somewhere, just raise my blood pressure like crazy. That idea is so scary to me. It makes me feel so tense. And James Caan gives such a great performance here as that character. He was actually one of the last choices to play the role. There were so many famous dudes in Hollywood that were offered this and turned it down before it finally went to James Caan. Apparently much because they didn't want to play somebody who's like in a weak position and being held hostage by a woman. But James Caan didn't care about that. He went ahead and did it, and he rocked it. And even though he's this, strong seeming masculine man, he feels so helpless in this situation against Kathy Bates, who gives like one of the most iconic performances in all of horror. She's absolutely epic as this character. A seemingly sweet and innocent G-rated lady just living out in Colorado who turns out to be absolutely terrifying because she's really like the image of toxic fandom taken to its extremes. The snowy atmosphere is wonderful and really serves a purpose of further isolating our main character. There's a side story about the sheriff possibly trying to help him, trying to figure out what's going on. He's such a great character as well. But it's difficult, right? There's just a zillion feet of snow everywhere, and that really adds to the tension, and of course also adding to the atmosphere, and making this cabin where they're staying in warm from the cold feel nice if it wasn't for the kidnapping, much like Dead of Winter. But I love Misery. It's one of the greatest horror films of the 90s. How can you not love it? Before I go, I just want to send out a massive thank you to my patrons who truly make this channel possible. Thank you guys so much. If anyone else wants to support me, there's always a link to my Patreon in the description below. Any support is very much appreciated, and I want to send out a special shout out to Brett Stoltz, Amanda BC, and Drug Honky. You guys absolutely rule. If you want to check any of these winter horrors out for yourself, I do have streaming options right here on the screen, but of course those are subject to change, so I also have physical media links in the description, and using those does help support the channel. And if you want to hang out with me more, you can click the video on the screen. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget to stay warm this holiday season, and I'll see you next time. Bye.